The only solution that I see is we never should have gotten into the Iran war.
It all
But
comes back to that. Being anti-war is almost being pro-military is like what I would go so far to say.
the reason that I chose this story in particular is because it really feels like the sailors are in some ways like the forgotten people right now. I chose this story very intentionally among the several other stories that are unfolding this week. It's a crazy news time right now. I mean, Carolyn Levitt's leaving the White House.
And then in hindsight, I'm like, holy shit, like that was a work of art, and it's because I'm like being avoidant, like trying not to like unravel those feelings yet. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Washed Up. I'm Abby, this is Colin, and we report on the weekly news so that you don't have to listen to the legacy media that your grandparents do. It is currently August 21st, and we are going through a major transition. I will be back on the West Coast permanently for a bit, and we'll see like where I end up. If I end up like visiting back to DC, we'll definitely do in-person episodes, but just for our loyal washed up viewers and listeners, expect a bit of a rebrand. And we are doing still our new form of content where one of us chooses a soft news story and one of us chooses a hard news story. And this week it is Colin's turn to talk about the more newsy aspect. I do not know what he's about to say, and we're gonna analyze and talk about it.
Yeah, well, just on that note, real quick. So we're gonna be doing some remote episodes in the future, and it could be kind of interesting to have Abby represent like the West Coast perspective and me on the East. As you said, I think there's a good branding opportunity there. We've already been floating some ideas and whatnot, but you guys should just stay tuned for that. But this week, my hard news story is what's going on with the USS Abraham Lincoln. Actually, I've changed my story several times over the course of this week, but this one has really seemed to stay. Even as early as late last week, this has been in the headlines. It was starting to because basically there's 5,000 sailors aboard this aircraft carrier that's been deployed to the Middle East since November of 2025. They left out of San Diego. They've been, active in the war against Iran. And aircraft carriers are kind of a different beast in a way. There's so many people aboard them. They're so massive. The US only has 10 aircraft carriers or so. And so, yeah, it's a big deal that they've been deployed for so long. I think their deployment was around, I want to say, 2 months over what they were planning. And as I said, this is all because of the Iran war. It causes a major outcry, though, because there was reports coming out about sailors who one of them actually jumped overboard with a life vest on, and this was deemed a mental health episode by the crew or people on board or the Navy itself. The Navy also said that it had not noted an uptick in suicidal ideation among sailors, but apparently this sailor who actually went overboard, there's been others that have been threatening to go overboard, so it just is painting this very bleak picture of what's actually going on aboard this carrier. So what have you been hearing about the conditions on the ship?
Yeah, everything that you just said sounds pretty accurate to everything I've been hearing. I like that you chose this story because I think anything to do with um the connections that we have to a place like San Diego where there's like a lot of mostly like like Navy Marine life there and um how we've been closely covering the Iran war as well. It just like shows another aspect of people that have been affected and like I don't think all the time that things like this are shown all the time on the mainstream media or at least like it's just so clogged up with so many tragedies happening that this is like a very like necessary but dark thing to talk about.
I chose this story very intentionally among the several other stories that are unfolding this week. It's a crazy news time right now. I mean, Carolyn Levitt's leaving the White House. There was a huge earthquake in Colombia. There's this murder trial going on for Lindsay Clancy that everyone's talking about.
Yeah.
But the reason
Fuck.
the reason that I chose this story in particular is because it really feels like the sailors are in some ways like the forgotten people right now. And so to shine a spotlight on this in whatever limited capacity we can, I think is the most important thing we could be vocalizing right now. And I think A lot of times the anti-war people get conflated with being anti-military, and I want to very clearly draw that distinction and say you can actually be very pro-military and want the best for our troops, and in some ways to believe that being anti-war is the best thing for the
I was
troops
about to
to
say
so
that.
that they're not being put into these impossible situations where, yeah, not only is their mental health suffering, but the conditions aboard the ship are reportedly awful. Just complete like lack of sleep, lack of communication with the outside world. The mail is all disrupted and out of order. Terrible food that they're being given. Electricity is intermittent. No hot water at times. Again, it's very crowded aboard these surface ships. So yeah, I just think like we need to be shining a spotlight on this in whatever capacity that we can, because I do think this is the biggest ongoing story as sort of a sub story to the Iran war.
I like what you said about the distinction between military and being anti-war, almost in some ways that being anti-war is almost being pro-military is like what I would go so far to say in terms of caring about the mental health and the conditions of people who are willing to serve our country in that way. Like it's not a job for everybody. And I sometimes also think that the connotation of being, quote, like pro-military can be looked at as negatively because of the the implications of what they're being forced to do. And I think sometimes we need to look at the bigger picture and look at who's in charge rather than these people on like a micro level. Colin and I have reported before on like people like people's deaths in the military and like the young people who are kind of feel like they're forced into signing on, and those often become another form of like, I guess like forgotten people. So I definitely can see like why you chose this story.
And also, a lot of people in the military are roughly our age, and
Hmm.
especially on these surface ships, mid tw early to mid 20s is really exactly the age that people are. And so I feel like in some ways we owe it to people that we might know. I don't know that I know anyone on the Lincoln, but I definitely know people who are abroad right now
Yeah,
and
same.
fighting in some capacity in this war. And I know other people who are in the military, who are aviators and other stuff like that. I don't know exactly what they're up to. For all I know, maybe they are involved in that carrier somehow. And it troubles me a lot. I mean, also my sister was in the Navy for the longest time. She's still in the reserves actually, but it pains me deeply to imagine her and people similar to her being put through kind of needless, relentless torment
Hmm.
when there's an obvious solution here. Actually, so the George Washington, the USS Washington, is going to now replace the Lincoln in the region to kind of give them a bit of reprieve. So apparently, the Lincoln is back on its way to the U.S., but not without all of this controversy. And politicians have been responding to it very differently. You had
Yeah, what have you been seeing on that front?
I saw that Pete Hegseth was basically kind of indifferent on it, kind of in denial about like there even is
I'm
an
not that
issue.
surprised by that.
Yeah, no. So my criticism of Hegseth has always been I feel like he has this mentality that it's like kind of like macho masculinity is the only way forward. And I think that that form of masculinity oftentimes doesn't take seriously mental health as like a legitimate in the same way that physical health is a genuine thing that you have to upkeep and work toward and cultivate to have good physical health, you have to do the same with your mind. And I think there's still kind of a form of masculine man, quote unquote, who doesn't believe in that. And to me, Hegseth has always kind of conveyed that in just his words and his tone and rhetoric.
Well, also the military too has not been known for having the best mental health services. So although something like this is like very sad and dark, like I'm not I'm unfortunately not very surprised with the conditions that people are willing to leave other humans in, especially like we were saying like young people. Um, I've like talked to people who have enlisted before talking about like what things they've like gone to or gone through and like the services are provided and it is very little, and I know a lot of people who have like joined so that they can like later like pay for their higher education or like be set for longer. So it's like these benefits like drawing them in, and you like you like that's why kind of why I don't really understand like critiquing people like on the individual level when it comes to system-wide issues.
Right. That's something that you and I talk about, I feel like a lot, like the incentives of the military and what draws people in, what keeps them in service when maybe it's causing them harm or their families harm. And for me, it comes from a deeply personal place because I come from a military family and I have seen firsthand the effect that deployment has on families, and it's awful. I mean, so when I was growing up, my dad would be gone for like periods of 9 months at a time, and it was horrible. Like I basically had a single mother at that time, and she was oftentimes very stressed out because she didn't always have direct communication with him. So it was like his status at any given day was kind of an unknown. And then my mom would have to like move us around the world, moved like 8 times before I turned 12. And yeah, that really impacts the family. No matter how strong or close-knit that family is, it's going to just cause this undue burden on every member of the family. And you get these like benefits and perks, quote unquote.
It's that like a sacrifice.
Yeah, it definitely was. And you get like certain perks like good healthcare coverage. The GI Bill was really useful in my case. And it makes you kind of wonder because it's all this big trade-off, right? Of if you're going to go into service as an officer or enlisted, that's something that's going to be affecting your whole family. And unfortunately, in situations like this where we just had these prolonged deployments, even more so, it's going to be causing that strain. So going back to the Lincoln, just to kind of tie this up, I had heard that one of the wives of the people, either the one who jumped off or who was threatening to jump off, um, found out secondhand from the friend of her husband, basically, who the news got out that someone had almost jumped overboard, and she was like kind of trying to figure out, suss out and yeah, she heard it like secondhand, not from the officer above her husband or anything like that, but I think vicariously. And I think that that just is a failure of communication. I think if there's ever an incident involving someone's loved one on board a ship or just in the military in general, then the leadership has to really step up and communicate very clearly, directly, like, hey, your loved one was involved in this
Hmm.
incident. We're taking these steps proactively to make sure that they're in the best hands moving forward and we're taking care of their needs because we value our troops. I'm not sure that that happened here. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but the reporting on it was leading me to believe there was kind of a failure of communication around all of this.
If you were to like propose something to help alleviate some like I guess like pain or suffering or like fix parts of the system, like how what would you say?
I mean, this one's tough. The only solution that I see is we never should have gotten into the Iran war.
It all
But
comes back to that,
but
doesn't
like
that?
we've been saying that since March 1st
Yeah.
essentially. So it kind of falls on deaf ears with our leaders in a lot of ways. And so we made our bed and we have to lie in it. And I say we as in like America, but really this is being carried out almost unilaterally by our president and his allies. And so in a lot of ways, I feel like there isn't anything you can do other than to be really vocal about when there is shortcomings in the way that these issues are being handled, or if we can shine a spotlight on yeah, the things that are not going well. I think again, people will try to deem us as somehow anti-military, but understand like me coming from a military family, I'm trying to adopt the perspective of the troops and their families and advocate for that and their
Yeah.
well-being more than anything else. Like I said, long term, not getting into prolonged wars, forever wars is probably the best way to go.
In so many different ways that affect so many different people, but this is just, like we said, like one of them. Just been a consistent sort of rhetoric that we've been saying on the show for a while.
And the last thing I have to say about it is they put this straight to Donald Trump, a reporter did, and Trump basically he said the dumbest thing he could have said, which was he didn't think that they had been deployed long enough.
very shortly, and it's being replaced with another very similar
Has
ship.
the deployment gone on too long? Are you worried
No,
that
no,
there's
no,
no help?
not nearly long enough. Thank you, everybody.
which doesn't even make sense. So I'll just leave it at that.
The audience can do with that what they want to.
He said not nearly long enough.
Okay, well, now I'm going to talk about our soft news for the week. Very 180 switch. But I have been listening to all the co top contenders for Album of the Year.
Oh, nice.
And so I kind of wanted to talk about that and also just like the state of music right now. So the Grammys, basically the timeline is into end of August 2026 to be considered for the next upcoming Grammys, the 69th Grammys, which will be in February 2027. And so I saw this like Reddit post about who they thought were going to be the top contenders for Album of the Year, and it's Olivia Dean's Art of Loving, Taylor Swift Showgirl, Bruno Mars The Romantic. Olivia, you seem pretty sad for a girl so in love. No bias there. Rosalia's Lux, BTS's album, Casey Musgraves, and then Casey Musgraves' album, which I didn't listen to BTS's album, so I feel like I can't really comment on that one, but I was listening to Casey Musgraves' one today. And the reason why I bring this up as well is because I kind of just wanted to talk about the state of music right now, and the songs that do chart, unfortunately, are like what I've been calling like TikTok songs, or people making music in hopes that it becomes like a viral song so that it can chart. And I think that is such a shame. Um, I think the Grammys in general are can be a little bit of a scammy sense, because like there's like this like board that is like choosing what's going to be like critically acclaimed or whatever. But I just thought it was an interesting conversation to have, like bringing back long form content of music. One, like I think that's like a lost art, and two, the way that social media has impacted music as like these rollouts begin to happen.
Oh, absolutely. I love to kind of analyze the rollout of different albums and the themes of them. We've picked apart before Taylor Swift's Life of a Showgirl in a past episode, and neither of us loved it, to put it lightly. I've listened to about half of those albums, but not all of them. I have a clear choice for who I think should be Album of the Year.
I do too, but like
It
I'm
wasn't on my
trying
list.
so hard to be unbiased.
Well, yours was on the list, mine
Yeah.
wasn't,
Is
but
yours Lady Gaga?
no, she won
Last
last
year.
year for Mayhem, but mine
Florence.
this year, yeah, would be Florence and the Machine, Everybody Scream. It came out on Halloween of last year. Every song hits. You listen to it top to bottom, and it tells a very compelling story. And I think that's kind of what you're saying is a lot of these albums, especially in like the 60s, 70s, 80s, were intended to be listened on a record or a CD where you'd have to like listen straight
Hmm.
through the album.
Like true album of the
Mhm.
year.
And I think that that's a very to write in for an album versus to write for social media or TikTok or online consumption or streaming is very different. So I think yeah, there's something lost about the old records and the storytelling that people were able to do through those. But anyway, my favorite artists usually are very well aware of the continuity of the songs in their albums, so that's something that I kind of deliberately seek out.
I think that the effect that like TikTok, Reels, like whatever viral soundbite going on has on music is also the way that artists are kind of mimicking one another and like changing what people really initially loved about them. I think we said that a lot about like Showgirl. It's like I think Taylor's core is being this like storytelling-esque like princessy type like music, like very like and like she tries to grow with it, but I think what she was trying to do with Showgirl was something of like mimicking Sabrina Carpenter's like raunchy like snippets that are also a bit for TikTok, and like I won't like lie, like I do listen to both of those artists. But there is a piece of Sabrina Carpenter that I wonder if she pigeonholed herself into this like sexy character and if that's like actually what she wants to play. Like there's nothing wrong with it, but I wonder if she is doing this to keep on selling music and get those like TikTok views and monthly listens versus like when I first started listening to her, like the ballads and like the story of like what she was actually feeling as a person.
I think what I'm hearing you say is a lot of the pop of today isn't really willing to take a creative risk, and part of what risk involves is either the chance that people might hate it, and you
Mhm.
have to do something that is either thought-provoking or original or kind of contrary to the trend of the moment. And what you're saying is with Sabrina and Taylor, they've become very popular, but they've done so by more so following the trend rather than bucking the trend and taking creative risks. I loved the Taylor Swift era of Folklore and Evermore.
That was I
Peak.
so good.
So
I also think that was such a creative risk for her that wouldn't
it
have
was.
happened without COVID, and it actually triggered her resurgence. Like
And it totally paid off.
she was not doing that music, or she was not as big as she was during her Lover era, where she was still like, with Joe Alwyn and like had kind of like grappled with this unbecoming of like who she was as like a pop star. And everyone started loving her for being so honest in her work and like really changing her sound. I think that was such a good creative risk that she got to take because of COVID. And I w really wish that more artists were able to do that. I think I really, really hope Olivia wins Album of the Year, not just like being a. I'm trying my best not to be unbiased or not to be biased because I am like a very big Olivia fan, but I think that this third album of hers is genuinely her best work. Like I saw this creator analyzing, I wish I remembered the username, but she was analyzing Olivia's album and she said something like how because she was writing this album without an end in sight, the love songs are just so authentic because it was written in that moment versus like if you were to go back and try to do this like unraveling of a relationship and try to remember what it was like to feel that like first date feeling or this like feeling crazy about like your lover going away and
The
I
limerence.
yes, like the limerence. Me and Colin were joking actually when he was listening to the album like that this whole concept seems to be about limerence in a way. But I really love that Olivia seems like she is just an artist who happens to be a pop girl. Like I fully believe in that like sentiment that I think the the Times called her that in like a podcast.
There was a lot of standout songs from her album. I'm not like a diehard Olivia Rodrigo fan, but I've listened to her past work, and I think this album there definitely were standout songs. Expectations is one I've really taken to lately. I've had it on loop. I think I probably listened to it 20 times in a row. These days I've got
Like the
expectations.
manifestations you play in your head before like going to work or to
Yeah.
on a date or
And then there was
The
The
Cure
Cure.
is like the best song I've ever It's the best song in her entire discography. Like I just it's also everything that she is as an artist and you just feel how vulnerable she is in this.
That one it took me a while to warm up to, and Abby played it for me when it first came out, and I was like, it's okay. Like I don't know if I'd rank it up there with her past hits, but then it took me several months, and I was like, oh, this is like the exact emotion that I've been resisting. And once I had that realization, it suddenly just like clicked, and I was like, The Cure is an amazing. Vocally, it's really good. Lyrically, it's really good. Emotionally, it just like hit exactly where I wasn't willing to go.
I think there's something about like really good music kind of showing a mirror up to you. Like there are so many songs that I like don't like listening to at first because I'm like going through this and then in hindsight I'm like holy shit, like that was a work of art and it's because I'm like being avoidant, like trying not to like unravel those feelings yet that like I had realized I didn't like that. Like there's so many songs like that that I'm like, I actually can't listen to this yet. And like, I know that I'm not gonna like this yet because I'm still going through that. And I think I was talking to a friend the other day about how music is one of the best forms of art because it has that ability to do that to people.
And I think we have to mention Drop Dead, which was, I think, the first single off of Olivia's new album.
Hmm.
And yeah, that one also hit a spot.
Yeah. So just like having all these like dreams about this person, like kind of being a little bit more obsessed with them, like daydreaming, stuff like that. Like, she just, it's just such a great album, like a great, great timeline to a relationship. That I don't know, every single song. I was very nervous about, not very nervous, but I was interested to hear an Olivia Rodrigo love song. But she plays it perfectly. Dare I say, the love side is better than the sad songs, which is what she is typically known for.
Any other albums on that list that you mentioned that you've really been listening to or
I
have?
think that it's going to be one of the Olivias. I think Olivia Dean's The Art of Loving also has a very great chance of winning. I would be very surprised if I liked Bruno Mars's album. I don't think that it's a contender, maybe a nomination, but I don't think it'll win. One that I thought that might be nominated, but I would be surprised if it is Harry Styles's Disco All the Time album. Yeah, that one is like not his best work. I love him, so like I've played it a lot, but like if I'm going to like look at it from like a critiquing point of view, it's you could also hear like the TikTokification of his music in that as well.
Yeah, I won't lie. I haven't listened to any of those, and I feel like I'm also like kind of at an age like it sounds strange to say because we're really young, but like I'm kind of at an age where I know the music that I like, and it was kind of the music that I grew up to, and I feel like I'm in some ways like done growing up, and I don't feel the same need to like refresh my playlist and like look and seek out like new stuff, even from the artists that I already know that I really like. It's kind of like what you said of I know that I would like it if I listened to it, but I just don't like feel the need, which is really weird because when I was a teenager, like I was just like trying to consume all the music that I possibly
So
could.
angsty teenager.
Uh,
I feel like I also need to mention honorable mention to Phoebe Bridgers' new album Lost Weekend. That one, this Reddit post that I was like looking at came out a while ago, and I also think that that one has a pretty good shot. It's already like critically acclaimed as well, rated very highly on Pitchfork. Um, yeah, also a good listen.
Yeah, well, I think that's all that I got. I think there's a lot there with the taking creative risks, how pop music has evolved such that people are even more pigeonholed into the roles that they are trying to portray for the sake of social media, online, and knowing that their music is going to be primarily streamed rather than played as an entire product or record, and how that's kind of shifted the pop landscape into a more um, I don't know, less like
Feels more commodified.
yeah.
Yeah, that's all I got too.
Cool. We'll have to track that and see who gets nominated. In the past we've definitely talked about that, covered it for one
Yeah,
show.
maybe we'll clip this back and be like, we predicted it. Okay.
All right,
Well,
next week you can catch us, well, maybe not next week, we might take a little break, but you can catch us on a remote episode at some point. And yeah, I'm happy to say that even though Abby is leaving DC, she outlasted Carolyn Levitt as the press secretary.
I thought that was going to be your news story. I was like, yes, and a little rant session about Caroline Levitt.
Well,
But maybe another time.
maybe if they're hiring, you'll stay.
Oh God. Can you imagine? That's like my nightmare job.
Yeah, we'll let Scott Jennings have that one.
Okay. Well,
Washed
washed up
up
out.